If you think stacking side hustles is your ticket to early retirement, the numbers might surprise you. In 2025, the median gig worker nets just $9.42 an hour before expenses, far below what most people expect. The reality is a lot less glamorous than what's shown on social media. Take someone like Jamie, who juggles food delivery apps, reselling sneakers, and a print-on-demand store. By the end of the week, Jamie has clocked over 50 hours, only to find that after platform fees and hidden costs, there's barely enough left to cover rent, let alone save. In this video, we'll break down the side hustle's top influencers' hype and compare the promises to the actual results. Before you sign up for another easy income stream, let's look at what the latest data really says. The 2025 Gig Economy Reality Check. In 2025, the gig economy has become a defining feature of the workforce. According to recent labor reports, about 35% of Americans now participate in some form of gig work, whether that's driving, delivering food, freelancing, or reselling online. For many, these side hustles seem like a straightforward way to supplement income. But the reality behind the numbers tells a more sobering story. Let's take a closer look at what actually happens when someone signs up for a popular side hustle like driving for Uber. On paper, the platform's advertised pay rates can look promising. However, once you factor in the real-world costs, fuel, car maintenance, insurance, and platform fees, the actual take-home pay drops significantly. For example, a typical Uber driver in a mid-sized city might gross $700 in a week after putting in long hours. Out of that, $120 goes to gas, $60 to routine maintenance and repairs, and about $80 to platform fees. After accounting for these expenses, plus setting aside money for self-employment taxes, that driver is often left with less than $440 for a full week's work. That's before even considering unpaid downtime between rides or the wear and tear that slowly eats away at the value of their vehicle. This pattern isn't unique to rideshare. Analyzing financial records from 10,000 side hustlers across various platforms, we found that 68% earned less than $500 a month after expenses. That's barely enough to cover basic living costs in most cities, let alone build savings or pay off debt. The $2,500 per month figures often promoted by influencers are outliers. Only about 2% of side hustlers reach that level, and most already have a head start through industry connections or specialized skills. The financial pressure is only one part of the equation. According to a 2025 Singapore study by Impossible Psych Services, 68% of millennials juggling multiple gigs reported high levels of burnout. Another survey found that 83% of side hustlers experience elevated stress, citing unpredictable workloads, lack of benefits, and the constant need to seek out new opportunities. Unlike traditional jobs, gig work rarely offers paid time off, health insurance, or any real sense of security. Workers are left to navigate shifting algorithms and ever-changing platform rules, which can abruptly cut their earnings without warning. The shift in the gig landscape since the pandemic is clear. Platforms have adjusted their algorithms, often making it harder to earn the same amount for the same work. Delivery windows are tighter, customer ratings carry more weight, and penalties for cancellations are harsher. These incremental changes add up, squeezing workers' margins while increasing the pressure to perform. Many people who once saw gig work as a flexible side income now find themselves in a cycle of long hours and diminishing returns. Take the example of ride-hailing again. In 2019, drivers typically kept a larger share of each fare. Now, after multiple rounds of platform fee increases, drivers often see a smaller percentage of each trip. Food delivery workers face similar challenges. Base pay per delivery has dropped, and customers are tipping less frequently as service fees climb. These changes have crept in gradually, but the impact on weekly earnings is unmistakable. The hidden costs don't stop at daily expenses. Many gig workers underestimate the impact of self-employment taxes, which can add 15 to 30% to their annual tax bill, depending on income. Accountants who work with gig workers note that most people are caught off guard by their first tax season, often failing to set aside enough throughout the year. There's also the cost of staying competitive. Rideshare drivers spend an average of $1,200 a year on vehicle upkeep, while freelance creatives invest nearly $900 annually in software and hardware just to keep up. Perhaps the most telling sign of the gig economy's decline is the stagnation of wages. While average wages in traditional jobs have risen with inflation, gig earnings have barely budged. In real terms, this means side hustlers are losing purchasing power year after year. It's no surprise that nearly 3/4 of new gig workers quit within 6 months, realizing that the promise of easy money rarely matches the day-to-day reality. These numbers set the stage for a closer look at the claims platforms make about earnings. While the dashboards may highlight impressive hourly rates, the real math behind those numbers reveals a different story, where the hustle math doesn't add up. When you break down the numbers behind gig work, the gaps quickly become clear. Platforms like Uber promote an hourly rate of $28 for drivers in 2025, but that number is only part of the story. It reflects gross pay during engaged time, the period from accepting a ride to dropping off a passenger. It ignores the reality that, on average, drivers spend nearly half their time waiting for requests or searching for passengers, according to Resuminerd's 2025 data. Once you factor in unpaid downtime, a driver's actual gross hourly rate drops closer to $16. But the deductions don't stop there. The American Automobile Association pegs vehicle depreciation at 66 cents per mile for rideshare drivers in 2025, a figure that quickly adds up over hundreds of miles each week. After subtracting gas, insurance, maintenance, and the platform's commission, drivers in most major cities are left with about $10 to $12 per hour before taxes. That's less than the starting wage at many fast food chains, which also offer more predictable schedules and basic benefits. Food delivery workers face similar numbers. DoorDash and other platforms advertise up to $25 per hour. But iPayout's 2025 analysis found that, after fees and expenses, the median delivery worker nets just $11.50 per hour during peak times. Real-world logs show that only a small fraction of workers ever reach the advertised rates, and most fall well below. Even in cities where gross pay appears higher, increased costs for parking, equipment, and lost time between orders erode any advantage. The comparison to traditional work is stark. According to research from MBO Partners, the average U.S. gig worker earns just 58% of what a traditional employee makes for comparable hours. For many, this means working longer weeks just to match a single full-time paycheck. And while overtime in a conventional job can push earnings well above base pay, gig work rarely offers the same opportunity. There are no time-and-a-half rates, no holiday premiums, and no employer-sponsored benefits. Taxes create another layer of complexity. Unlike W-2 employees, gig workers pay both the employer and employee share of Social Security and Medicare taxes, which can total up to 25% of their net income. Prudential's 2025 survey found that nearly 80% of freelancers were surprised by their first tax bill, with the average side hustler facing an unexpected $400 payment at tax time. This cash flow squeeze is compounded by the need to make quarterly estimated payments, which many new gig workers overlook. Regional differences further complicate the picture. Drivers in cities like New York or San Francisco might see higher gross fares, but they also face steeper costs. Parking fees, higher insurance premiums, and equipment losses, such as stolen bikes for couriers, can consume a significant share of earnings. In some cases, these expenses push net hourly wages even lower than the national average. Platforms also inflate earnings claims by including temporary bonuses and referral incentives in their calculations. A driver who receives a one-time sign-up bonus can briefly skew average earnings upward, but these windfalls don't last. According to the FTC's 2025 review of gig platform disclosures, typical recurring earnings fall 37 to 52% below advertised rates once these short-term incentives expire. The reality for most workers is far less lucrative than the marketing suggests. Premium gig services offer little relief. For instance, Uber Black drivers must maintain newer, luxury vehicles and pay higher insurance rates, often 4 times that of a standard policy. The modest increase in fares rarely offsets these additional costs. After accounting for deadhead miles and stricter requirements, net earnings are only marginally better than standard rideshare, if at all. The supposed flexibility of gig work often evaporates under scrutiny. To reach even modest income goals, workers must align their schedules with peak demand periods, which typically means early mornings, late nights, and weekends. The idea of working whenever you want is at odds with the reality of chasing algorithms and unpredictable shifts. This pattern, promises that don't match up to lived experience, extends beyond active gig work. The next layer of the hustle economy is built on the idea of earning money with little to no effort at all. The passive income lie exposed. The idea of passive income, money that supposedly rolls in while you do nothing, remains one of the most persistent selling points in the side hustle world. In practice, though, the most popular passive income methods in 2025 require far more ongoing work than most people expect. Print-on-demand stores, which are often described as set-and-forget businesses, now demand daily attention just to remain visible in crowded online marketplaces. Sellers spend hours each week handling customer inquiries about shipping delays, processing refunds, and updating designs to keep up with trends. These are tasks rarely mentioned in the social media testimonials or earnings screenshots. Crypto staking platforms advertise effortless returns, but even these require regular maintenance. Investors must track complicated withdrawal policies, monitor gas fees, and periodically take rewards to maintain any meaningful yield. The average user spends several hours each month managing wallets, securing accounts, and troubleshooting issues, all for an annual return that often lags behind a standard high-yield savings account. There's also the risk of tax complications. TurboTax's 2025 report found that 63% of first-time crypto investors overlooked IRS reporting rules, leading to unexpected penalties. Some so-called passive income streams depend on significant upfront investment. Real estate rentals can generate ongoing cash flow, but only after a substantial down payment, regular maintenance, and the time spent dealing with tenants or property managers. Mintos 2025 data on real estate crowdfunding shows that most investors see modest returns unless they commit large sums of capital. Dividend portfolios are another example. To earn a few $100s a month in dividends, you typically need to invest well over $100,000, which is out of reach for most people starting out. Dropshipping is frequently promoted as a low-effort, automated business. The reality is much less appealing. Shopify's latest merchant survey reveals that 93% of successful dropshippers now outsource customer service or hire staff to handle disputes and inquiries. Chargebacks and payment holds are common, and ad campaigns need constant adjustment to keep up with shifting algorithms. What's marketed as a hands-off store often turns into a demanding job, with owners spending hours each week just to break even. Credit card churning, another passive strategy, involves signing up for new credit cards to collect bonuses and rewards. While some people do see short-term gains, ResumeNerd's 2025 analysis found that the average churner spends at least 5 hours per month tracking spending requirements, monitoring credit scores, and managing annual fees. Miss a payment or miscalculate a bonus, and the costs can quickly outweigh the benefits. Content-based passive income is also less straightforward than it appears. Many course creators and newsletter writers report earning a few $100s per month on average, despite claims of six-figure results. Keeping subscribers engaged, updating material, and dealing with platform changes all require steady, ongoing effort. Even automated YouTube channels need regular uploads, copyright management, and audience interaction to maintain revenue. Investments that appear hands-off, like REITs or index funds, still demand active tax planning. REIT dividends are taxed as ordinary income, which can lead to higher tax bills than expected. Investors who chase municipal bond exemptions often overlook the impact of alternative minimum tax, and the paperwork involved can be significant. According to H&R Block, side hustle filers spend nearly half again as much time on tax prep compared to W-2 employees. The core problem is that most so-called passive income streams are anything but passive for the average person. They either require significant upfront capital, ongoing active management, or specialized knowledge, and often all three. The most reliable way to profit from the passive income trend is to sell the idea itself, whether through courses, affiliate links, or consulting. For most people, the return on their time rarely matches the promise. When you add up the hours spent maintaining these automated systems, the opportunity costs become hard to ignore. Every week spent chasing low-yield side projects is time that could have gone towards something with more lasting value. Opportunity costs nobody talks about. While the appeal of side hustles is easy to understand, the less obvious costs often go unmentioned. The biggest of these is the opportunity cost. The value of what you give up by spending time on low-yield gig work instead of activities that could move you forward in more substantial ways. For example, consider a 20-hour weekly shift with a food delivery app. The average driver brings in $214 before expenses. If that same time were invested in earning a technical certification, like AWS Cloud, which PayScale's 2025 data links to an $18,000 median salary boost, the long-term payoff would dwarf the short-term cash flow from gig work. Yet, the lure of instant, if modest, earnings keeps many people from making this calculation. Networking is another area where opportunity costs quietly accumulate. LinkedIn's 2025 workplace survey found that 27% of job hires come through personal referrals. Attending industry events or even engaging on professional platforms can yield returns that far exceed what most side hustles provide. Spending 20 hours per quarter at meetups or online networking can generate more job opportunities and, on average, a $4,500 signing bonus for referral hires. In contrast, the same hours spent delivering food net just a few $100s. Even passive engagement, like commenting on industry posts, has measurable impact. Active professionals see 37% more inbound job offers than their inactive peers. The time demands of gig work often crowd out these higher-value career accelerators. Health is another casualty. A Stanford study showed that workers who combine a main job with a side hustle and log 60 or more hours per week experience 74% more sick days than those working standard hours. The result is an average productivity loss of $3,200 annually in missed wages and healthcare costs, which is more than most side hustles net after expenses. Chronic sleep deprivation, which is common among gig workers, contributes to a broader economic loss as well. Rand Corporation estimates put the national cost at $190 billion per year, with gig workers particularly at risk. The learning curve of new platforms drains time and energy that could be spent acquiring skills with higher returns. Mastering a gig platform like Instacart can take 25 to 50 hours before reaching peak efficiency. According to Bureau of Labor Statistics data, food delivery workers gain few, if any, transferable skills even after hundreds of hours. In contrast, the same time invested in a coding bootcamp or trade certification leads to measurable wage growth for nearly 90% of participants. Cognitive fatigue is another hidden cost. The University of Pennsylvania tracked decision fatigue in gig workers and found their problem-solving ability dropped by 32% after side hustle shifts. This mental depletion affects career growth. Tired workers are more likely to skip networking, delay skill development, and underperform in their primary roles. The study quantified the impact. Every 10 hours spent on gig work reduced annual salary growth in main jobs by 3.1% due to missed promotions and raises. Social and family connections often suffer as well. Pew Research data shows that gig workers attend 42% fewer family events and volunteer 65% less than non-hustlers. These weakened ties have real economic consequences. 83% of small business owners credit personal networks for early success, and 91% of job seekers find referrals through community connections. Constant hustling erodes these support systems, making upward mobility harder to achieve. Rest is undervalued but essential. The National Sleep Foundation reports that well-rested employees are 21% more productive. For workers earning the median salary, this boost is worth about $8,400 per year, almost the same as what the average side hustler nets from a 10-hour weekly gig after expenses. Instead of gaining ground, many hustlers end up trading health and performance for marginal financial gains. Side gigs also disrupt strategic career moves. Wharton's research found that workers with side hustles apply for 73% fewer internal promotions than their peers. Fatigue from late-night deliveries or after-hours projects leaves little energy for preparing presentations or taking on challenging assignments. This creates a cycle. The need for side income limits advancement, and lack of advancement keeps workers reliant on side gigs. Skill atrophy is a further risk. Professionals who shift time from their primary field to low-skill gig work see a measurable decline in their core abilities. Accountants who drive for food delivery, for example, show an 18% slowdown in spreadsheet work. Graphic designers who pick up rideshare shifts display reduced proficiency in their craft. Over time, this erosion resembles muscle atrophy. Skills fade when not regularly exercised. Even geographic flexibility is compromised. Many remote job opportunities require a willingness to relocate, but gig commitments often tie workers to specific locations. For example, a delivery driver can't move to a more affordable city unless there's enough demand in the new area. The potential savings from relocating, median rent differences can reach $1,400 per month, often surpass what most side hustles earn after taxes. Retirement planning is another casualty. Workers who devote 20 hours a week to gigs instead of learning long-term wealth strategies miss out on the power of compounding. Maxing out a Roth IRA over 30 years can yield over $1 million more than sporadic contributions. But many side hustlers never make this calculation. Creative ambitions are sidelined as well. The writer who drives for rideshare loses time that could be spent on a book. The musician doing odd jobs sacrifices practice hours that might lead to paid gigs. In the end, these hidden costs accumulate, limiting both financial and personal growth. Despite the promises, 72% of new side hustlers quit within 6 months, according to a recent Side Hustle Nation survey. The stress and opportunity costs simply outweigh the modest returns for most. Digital platforms also play a role here. A 2025 WeForum report found that 86% of workers feel pressured to adapt to AI-driven changes, further raising stress and reducing job satisfaction. Stanford's research confirms that gig drivers face 40% more occupational stress than traditional workers. With all these costs in mind, it's worth asking who actually benefits from the hustle economy, who actually profits from hustle culture. The main beneficiaries of hustle culture are rarely the workers themselves. Instead, the real profits flow to the companies and platforms that shape the side hustle landscape. The online course industry, which promises to teach the secrets of side income, now generates over $3.2 billion a year according to Holon IQ. The background research shows top platform workers often earn more from monetizing teaching than from the hustle itself. These creators build their wealth by selling advice, guides, and templates, products that scale easily and require little of the hands-on labor their students end up performing. Gig platforms extract even more value from the system. Companies like Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash have refined a model that maximizes their own earnings while minimizing risk. Uber and Lyft now claim between 30% and 40% of each fare, up from 20% just a few years ago. DoorDash's 2025 financials show the company earns $1.14 per active driver minute, while workers receive only 38 cents. Food delivery apps also charge restaurants steep commissions, often 25% to 30%, while paying drivers as little as $2 to $4 per delivery. These platforms act as middlemen, collecting payments from both businesses and workers, but assuming almost none of the operational burden or liability that traditional employers face. Influencer marketing adds another layer to the profit structure. Mid-tier finance creators can earn thousands of dollars per sponsored post promoting side hustle apps, and many receive additional affiliate commissions for every new worker they recruit. For example, Lyft pays $750 for each qualified driver referral. This arrangement creates a system where influencers profit most from participation itself, not from the actual results of the hustles they promote. The incentives encourage the constant promotion of new apps and side gigs, regardless of whether they deliver on their promises. While side hustlers hope to see their earnings grow, the platforms and service providers see more reliable gains. iPayout's 2025 data shows that gig platform revenues grew by 17% year over year, even as average worker earnings stagnated. The gap between platform profits and worker pay continues to widen, with little sign of reversal. For many side hustlers, recurring costs eat into already thin margins. Data shows 62% of side hustlers struggle with high app fees and tool costs cutting into profits. Payment processors like Stripe and PayPal charge nearly 3% per transaction, which quickly adds up for workers with dozens of small payments each month. A freelancer earning $3,000 in a month will pay about $120 in processing fees, effectively losing several hours of work to transaction costs alone. These companies processed $78 billion in gig economy payments last year, collecting more than $2 billion in fees. Software and subscription services have built their own business models around the needs of gig workers. Shopify store owners pay for monthly plans and add-ons. Fiverr sellers lose 20% of every gig to platform fees. Even basic tools for content creation, like design software or scheduling apps, often come with monthly charges. The average side hustler spends a significant portion of their earnings just to access the tools required to stay competitive on crowded platforms. The coaching and mentoring industry has found a steady stream of clients among side hustlers. Career coaches charge hundreds of dollars per session, promising to help clients balance multiple income streams or find the next big opportunity. Business mentors offer expensive accelerator programs with vague guarantees. Even professional networking platforms like LinkedIn profit from gig workers, generating billions in annual revenue from freelancers hoping to land new clients or contracts. Social media platforms, meanwhile, profit every time someone watches a video about side hustles or scrolls past a #grindset post. Instagram and TikTok earn ad revenue by promoting content that glorifies hustle culture, often showcasing selective or misleading financial results. Researchers have found that nearly 70% of popular hustle-related videos omit or distort key financial details, but the platforms benefit from the engagement. Regardless, traditional employers also gain from the proliferation of side hustles. Companies that pay low wages can avoid raising salaries by encouraging workers to supplement their income with gig jobs. Some even partner with gig platforms, effectively shifting the burden of fair compensation onto workers themselves. The Economic Policy Institute estimates that this dynamic suppresses wage growth across the service sector by over 1% per year. Banks and lenders seize the opportunity as well. Gig workers often pay higher interest rates on loans and credit cards, reflecting their perceived instability. Car loans for rideshare vehicles and personal loans for freelancers come with steeper terms than those offered to salaried employees. Insurance companies, too, charge significantly higher premiums for gig workers who lack the bargaining power of large employer groups. Even the tax industry profits from hustle culture. Tax preparers and software companies charge gig workers more for filing self-employment returns. H&R Block reports that gig workers spend twice as much on tax preparation as W-2 employees, fueling a billion-dollar market for specialized accounting services. Across the board, the infrastructure built around hustle culture funnels money upward, from the workers to the platforms to the service providers and marketers. The promise of multiple income streams mostly materializes for those who design, maintain, and sell access to the system, not for the majority of participants. This dynamic shapes not just individual finances, but the broader landscape of work and opportunity, setting the stage for a closer look at what actually drives shaping the modern workplace. One stands out for its impact on income growth: the specialization paradox. While side hustles and multiple income streams are often promoted as the smartest path to financial security, the data tells a different story. LinkedIn's 2025 workforce report, which analyzed 12 million professionals across 300 industries, found that individuals who focused on a single skill or niche saw their wages grow 3.5 times faster than those dividing their efforts among various gigs. The top 10% of specialists in each field earned more than the bottom half of generalists combined. This pattern is visible across a range of industries. Software engineers who concentrate exclusively on machine learning earn 28%, more than peers who split their time with freelance web design. Accountants specializing in tax law for tech startups bring in 37% higher salaries than those juggling general bookkeeping gigs. Even creative fields reward depth. Graphic designers focused on 3D modeling command 42% higher rates than those taking on a mix of logo, print, and web projects. The gap between specialists and generalists has widened steadily since 2020, when the difference in wage growth was just under double. Now, companies pay significant premiums for expertise that is difficult to replicate. A cybersecurity expert dedicated to blockchain vulnerabilities can bill over $200 per hour, while general IT freelancers average less than a quarter of that. The reason is simple. Deep knowledge solves complex problems faster and with fewer mistakes, which employers value highly. Achieving this level of expertise takes time. Labor economists estimate that reaching top-tier competence in any field requires roughly 3,000 hours of focused work. Someone who devotes 60 hours a week to one area will get there twice as quickly as someone dividing that time among 3 unrelated gigs. The opportunity cost of side hustles becomes clear. Every hour spent on unrelated tasks is an hour not invested in building valuable, marketable skills. Digital platforms amplify these differences. Upwork's 2025 data shows that specialists receive over 4 times as many interview requests as generalists. On Fiverr, top earners are those who stick to a single service and become known for it. A voice actor who works only on audiobook narration, for example, earns more than one who splits their focus across commercials and animation. Clients pay a premium for someone who has solved their exact problem many times before. Employers reinforce this trend in their hiring and promotion decisions. A survey of 500 hiring managers found that nearly 3/4 prefer candidates with deep single-field expertise over those with broader but shallower experience. Specialists require less training, adapt more quickly, and are promoted to management roles 22 months sooner on average, according to LinkedIn's data. They are also 43% more likely to be approached by recruiters for better positions. This premium for specialization appears in blue-collar work as well. Electricians who focus solely on solar installations earn 62%, more than those taking on a variety of wiring jobs. HVAC technicians specializing in commercial refrigeration systems out-earn generalists by almost 40%. Across trades, those who develop niche skills see higher and more stable incomes. Freelance platforms and marketplaces further reward depth. Top-rated specialists on top-dial command rates of $150 to $300 per hour, while generalists often compete for projects paying a fraction of that. The same holds true for creative professionals. Photographers who focus only on luxury real estate shoots earn far more per assignment than those who accept any available job. The education sector reflects this shift as well. Universities and training providers report that enrollment in specialized certificate programs has surged. Short, focused credentials in areas like AI engineering or healthcare analytics now deliver greater salary bumps than traditional, broad-based degrees. Employers increasingly seek out these laser-focused skills, valuing them over general knowledge. The logic behind the specialization paradox is straightforward. When you develop one skill to a high level, your earning potential grows geometrically, not linearly. Spreading your time across several unrelated gigs creates stagnant, flat income growth. Specialization also provides some protection against automation, since jobs requiring deep contextual understanding are harder to replace with software or AI. Generalist roles, in contrast, are often automated first. Despite all this, the appeal of side hustles persists, largely because they offer immediate, if modest, cash flow. But the long-term cost is significant. Every hour spent on low-yield gigs is an hour not invested in building real career capital. This paradox explains why many workers who chase multiple streams of income end up with less financial security than those who focus. Still, there are exceptions. Some side hustles do deliver meaningful returns without derailing career growth. Understanding these rare cases can help distinguish between opportunities that are worth pursuing and those that only look good on the surface. When side hustles make sense, the 5% exception. Some side hustles genuinely do what they promise, but these are the exception, not the rule. The most effective side gigs share a few traits. They use assets or skills you already have, require little ongoing effort, and don't distract from your main source of income or career development. Renting out idle assets is one of the clearest examples. If you own equipment that would otherwise sit unused, platforms like Fat Llama make it easy to generate income with almost no extra work. For instance, a camera worth $3,000, left untouched most of the month, can bring in $180 a week at average rental rates, over $9,000 a year just by being available. Construction workers with downtime on their machinery, or anyone with specialized gear, see similar returns. The critical factor is that the asset is already paid for and in demand, so there's no need to learn a new trade or invest in unfamiliar tools. Homeowners can tap into similar opportunities. In urban areas, renting out a parking space brings in an average of $250 per month, according to 2025 data from Neighbor.com. Those living near hospitals or airports often earn more, as demand for reliable parking is high among shift workers. Some people use their kitchens for meal prep through platforms like Chef earning $35 an hour, more than double what a typical food delivery driver earns after expenses. The difference is that these side gigs make use of resources you already own, rather than requiring you to spend money or time learning an entirely new system. Consulting or freelancing within your own profession is another valid exception. Accountants who take on extra tax prep during busy seasons can earn $75 to $150 per hour, far more than general online tutoring or unrelated gig work. Software engineers who contract for their previous employers often bill $90 an hour, which outpaces the net earnings from dropshipping or reselling. These arrangements work because they build on existing expertise, not because they require branching into something unrelated. LinkedIn's data shows that professionals consulting in their own field spend far less time on administrative work than those who try to start from scratch in a new area. Medical professionals have particularly strong options. Nurses who pick up per diem shifts at other hospitals earn $65 to $95 an hour, which is several times more than they'd get from driving for a rideshare or medical transport service. Dentists who lease out their chairs on weekends can make $800 a day, all with minimal active involvement. These opportunities exist because of the time and effort already invested in specialized training. Truly passive income streams are rare, but they do exist. Dividend investing is one, though it requires substantial capital. $250,000 in a dividend-focused index fund can yield about $1,000 a month with no ongoing effort. Royalties from old creative work or patents can also provide steady income. For example, a graphic designer who licensed a font family to a major software company receives monthly checks years after the work was completed. These cases highlight that passive income is usually the result of earlier labor or investment, not something that can be started from zero. There are also outliers who profit from highly specialized skills. A Latin professor who tutors for a unique institution, or a textile expert licensing knowledge to museums, can command high fees with little competition. These scenarios succeed because the expertise is rare and immediately valuable. The common thread in all these exceptions is that they don't require you to neglect your main career or invest in skills you don't plan to use long-term. They leverage what you already have: assets, knowledge, or credentials, rather than forcing you into unrelated work. The return on time is higher, and the risk of burnout or wasted effort is much lower. ResumeNerd's data from North America shows that 70% of gig workers are part-time and say they wouldn't do it full-time if better alternatives existed. This speaks to the reality that most side hustles are a stopgap, not a solution. The few that work well do so because they fit around your life, not because they take it over. For the majority, though, the pursuit of extra income through side hustles comes with hidden costs that go far beyond money. The psychological toll of always being on, the relentless need to stay available, answer notifications, and chase the next payout has a measurable effect on mental and physical health. Stanford's 2025 study of 4,300 gig workers highlights the psychological strain that rarely gets mentioned in side hustle success. Stories. Chronic sleep deprivation is widespread. 61% of gig workers average just 5.2 hours of sleep per night, while under the recommended minimum for healthy cognitive function. This isn't simply about feeling tired. MRI scans in the same study revealed that the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for judgment and decision-making, shows 18% less activity in sleep-deprived gig workers compared to those who are well-rested. The consequences are immediate. Drivers working overnight shifts, incentivized by surge pricing, experience reaction times similar to someone legally impaired by alcohol. Healthcare becomes another casualty. The majority of gig workers, 78%, report skipping preventive care appointments like annual checkups, dental cleanings, or cancer screenings to avoid missing out on income. The logic is straightforward. A $50 copay can represent several deliveries or rides. However, the long-term impact is severe. Uninsured gig workers end up paying more than double for emergency care compared to what prevention would have cost. Stories from the Stanford study include a driver who delayed seeking help for chest pain, resulting in a $28,000 hospital bill after a heart attack. Platform policies treat these outcomes as personal choices, but the systems themselves discourage taking time off. The uncertainty built into gig work fuels anxiety. 43% of full-time gig workers report anxiety disorders, a rate 3 times higher than the national average. The underlying cause is unpredictability, constantly checking apps, worrying about missing peak hours, and never knowing when the next job will appear. On average, gig workers check their phones over 200 times a day. Physiologically, the stress response is persistent. UCLA researchers found cortisol levels remain elevated for hours after a stressful gig shift, far longer than in traditional employment. The body stays in a state of hypervigilance, unable to fully relax even during supposed downtime. Relationships often deteriorate under these pressures. Participants in the Stanford study reported a 73% drop in shared meals with partners and a 68% decline in family outings after starting gig work. The constant need to monitor apps leads to continuous partial attention, being physically present but mentally elsewhere. Children in these households notice the difference, describing parents as always working, even during family time. Financial stress only amplifies these issues. Chasing bonuses and surge pricing can push workers beyond safe limits. One example from the data: a delivery driver worked 19 straight hours during a snowstorm, only to have a minor accident wipe out 2 weeks' earnings in repair costs. Over half of gig workers report experiencing similar financial setbacks each year, with little recourse or support from the platforms. Decision fatigue becomes a daily reality. After long shifts, workers are more likely to make impulsive choices, taking out high-interest loans to cover sudden expenses, or selling personal items to get by. This short-term survival mode undermines long-term financial stability. The constant cycle of earning, spending, and scrambling to recover from setbacks leaves little room for planning ahead. Isolation compounds the mental health burden. Without the structure of a traditional workplace, 68% of full-time gig workers report having no close friends. Traditional jobs naturally foster social connections through shared breaks and team activities, but gig work strips these away. The absence of casual interaction has measurable cognitive effects, comparable to other well-known health risks. The cycle of stress and sleep loss feeds on itself. Workers who are too anxious to rest pick up additional shifts to compensate, deepening their fatigue. Sleep clinics report that gig workers are over 3 times more likely to need prescription sleep aids, which can further impair next-day performance. Accidents and health crises resulting from this cycle often force workers to stay in the gig economy even longer, trapped by mounting bills. Platform design choices are not neutral. Push notifications and variable rewards are engineered to keep workers engaged, mirroring the mechanisms of gambling apps. The compulsion to check for new gigs can intrude on important life events, turning every moment into potential work time. The apps are built to maximize engagement, not well-being. Physical health also suffers. Chronic gig workers show signs of accelerated aging, including telomere shortening and early-onset musculoskeletal issues from repetitive tasks. Vision problems are on the rise, with optometrists noting a spike in screen vision syndrome among workers constantly checking devices outdoors. Despite the extra hours, gig workers consistently report lower life satisfaction. Surveys show they rate their overall happiness 38% lower than traditional employees, even when working far more. The modest income boost does not compensate for lost health, strained relationships, and constant stress. Most say they would leave gig work immediately if offered a stable, salaried role at similar pay. Research-backed evidence is clear. Side hustles only make sense when they leverage existing high-value skills. Everything else is a money-losing distraction. Before committing more time or energy, calculate your real hourly net after expenses to see if your hustle is actually worth it. Widespread beliefs about the benefits of multiple income streams often rest on shaky ground. Some of the most repeated claims about wealth and side hustles come from studies that don't actually support the narrative. The myth of 7 income streams. The idea that building wealth requires 7 separate income streams shows up everywhere: finance blogs, influencer posts, and countless side hustle guides. But the origins of this so-called rule are far less convincing than they appear. The original study behind this claim, conducted by Thomas Stanley in the early 2000s, followed retirees in their 60s who had spent decades accumulating assets. These individuals typically drew income from things like pensions, rental properties, and dividend stocks, all built up over a lifetime. The context was not about young professionals juggling a collection of side gigs. but about people who had already reached financial independence after years of focus. When researchers actually look at how today's self-made millionaires under 40 build wealth, the pattern is almost always the opposite of what the 7 streams myth suggests. A 2025 Fidelity study found that only 6% of young millionaires had more than 3 income streams. The overwhelming majority, 82%, reached their first million by doubling down on a single business, profession, or specialized skill. It's only after achieving significant success in one area that most diversify into other ventures or passive investments. The same holds true across industries. The founders of successful tech startups, for example, rarely split their attention between multiple projects in the early years. Doctors who achieve early financial independence do so through their core medical practice, not by driving for rideshare apps between shifts. Popular examples used to justify the multiple streams approach often misrepresent how wealth is actually built. Warren Buffett, for instance, generated his first million through a single investment partnership, not by splitting his time among different ventures. Elon Musk's wealth exploded only after the sale of PayPal, which was his sole focus at the time. Even high-profile creators like Mr. Beast made their first millions from a single platform before branching out into other businesses. The pattern is clear. Focus comes first, diversification comes later. Income statements from high earners reinforce this reality. A Harvard Business Review analysis found that among those under 35 earning over $200,000, nearly 90% drew at least 90% of their income from one source. Secondary streams, like small consulting gigs or modest investments, were almost always negligible in comparison. By contrast, those trying to patch together a living from several low-paying side hustles rarely break out of the lower income brackets. The math is straightforward. One person earning $120,000 from a specialized skill will almost always outpace someone scraping together $18,000 from a handful of unrelated gigs. Trying to build multiple income streams early on actually slows progress. Mastery in any field requires a significant investment of time, roughly 3,000 hours to reach a high level of competence. Splitting that effort across 3 or 4 different hustles means becoming average at all of them, rather than exceptional at one. Employment data backs this up. LinkedIn's 2025 wage growth report shows that workers who stick to a single skill see their salaries rise 3.5 times faster than those who divide their attention. Software engineers who focus exclusively on their core discipline reach 6-figure salaries years sooner than peers who try to juggle side work. The same is true for skilled trades, where specialists consistently out-earn generalists. The myth also ignores the power of compounding. Building a solid foundation in one area allows for reinvestment into truly passive income sources later, like real estate or index funds, rather than relying on a patchwork of side gigs that rarely scale. A consultant billing at a high hourly rate can set aside tens of thousands each year for investments. Someone working gig jobs at $15 an hour would have to put in hundreds of extra hours just to match that capital. Networking and career capital matter more than chasing small streams of cash. Time spent building relationships and expertise in one field leads to promotions, new opportunities, and higher long-term earnings. Professionals who immerse themselves in their industry, attending conferences, collaborating on projects, or seeking mentorship, see far greater returns than those who use their free time for unrelated side hustles. The 7 streams narrative also persists because it benefits those selling the dream. Platforms, course creators, and influencers profit by convincing others that diversification is the key to wealth, even though their own income is usually concentrated in a single area. Data on content creators shows that 97% make less than $500 a month across all platforms combined, despite working long hours. The rare viral successes are outliers, not the norm. Surveys of ultra-wealthy individuals echo this reality. When asked which income stream they would keep if forced to choose only one, the vast majority select their core business or specialized skill. Their fortunes are built on focus, not fragmentation. Warren Buffett's advice is often repeated for a reason. Put all your eggs in one basket and watch that basket. The wealthiest people concentrate their effort where it counts, instead of spreading themselves thin. 7 mediocre income streams do not add up to one strong one. They're just more ways to stay busy while making little progress. What often gets overlooked is how the platforms and systems that promote these myths use specific tactics to keep people invested in the hustle, regardless of the real returns. Platforms' psychological tricks. Gig platforms rely on a range of subtle psychological techniques to keep workers active on their apps for as long as possible. These methods are not accidental. Engineers and designers borrow strategies from behavioral economics and the gambling industry to maximize engagement, often at the expense of worker well-being. One of the most effective tactics is intermittent reward scheduling. Workers never know which order or ride will trigger a bonus or surge payout, so they keep checking the app and accepting jobs in hopes of hitting a lucky streak. A 2025 MIT study found that gig workers interact with their work apps an average of 27 times per hour, even when they're not actively working. This unpredictability mirrors the logic behind slot machines, where the next pull might be the big win. The result is a cycle of compulsive checking and constant readiness, driven by the hope of rare, high-paying gigs. Platforms also use artificial urgency to prompt immediate action. DoorDash, for example, sends out peak pay notifications even when demand is flat, encouraging drivers to log on and increase supply. Uber's algorithms sometimes trigger surge multipliers for drivers who haven't worked recently, regardless of actual rider demand. These alerts are designed to create a sense of scarcity and competition, pushing workers to commit to more shifts and longer hours than they might otherwise choose. According to internal surveys, 68% of drivers admit to working extra shifts in response to these notifications, even when the financial benefit is marginal. Goal gradient theory is another powerful tool. Apps display progress bars and artificial milestones, such as only $12 more to reach your $100 goal, which prompt workers to keep going until they hit the target. This effect is well documented in behavioral science. People are more likely to continue working as they approach a self-imposed or app-suggested goal, even if the final reward is arbitrary. Instacart and Grubhub both use similar tactics, encouraging workers to accept additional orders to avoid breaking the streak or missing out on a bonus. These incentives exploit loss aversion, making people reluctant to stop short of a goal, even when it no longer makes economic sense. Variable ratio reinforcement further deepens engagement. Uber's own data shows that drivers complete significantly more rides when the app occasionally offers high-fare trips at random. The unpredictability triggers dopamine spikes, reinforcing the urge to keep working. Stories from workers highlight how a single unusually high-paying trip can prompt hours of additional labor in the hope of repeating the experience, even if the average payout doesn't justify the effort. Perceptions of control are carefully managed. Metrics like acceptance rate and top dasher badges suggest that workers have agency in their performance and rewards. In practice, declining too many jobs often leads to fewer future offers, a consequence disguised as a natural result of worker choice. These status systems provide little real benefit, but tap into a desire for achievement and recognition, keeping workers striving for virtual milestones. Time pressure is another engineered feature. Uber's brief countdowns for accepting rides and Postmates notifications about other drivers considering the same order foster a sense of competition and urgency. These tactics lead to snap decisions, with many workers later regretting unprofitable or inconvenient jobs they accepted under pressure. The Federal Trade Commission's 2025 complaint highlights that 62% of gig workers feel rushed into poor choices by app interfaces. Social proof manipulations also play a role. Apps display earnings summaries for top drivers in your area, often using outdated or unrepresentative data. Lyft's weekly emails highlight the highest earners, creating unrealistic benchmarks and encouraging workers to put in longer hours in pursuit of similar results. Analysis shows that exposure to these comparisons increases average weekly hours worked, while actual earnings see minimal improvement. The sunk cost fallacy keeps workers engaged even when returns diminish. Uber's weekly quests and milestone bonuses show workers how close they are to a reward, prompting them to accept less profitable jobs to avoid wasting previous effort. This leads to a drop in average earnings near the end of bonus periods, as workers prioritize reaching the goal over maximizing hourly pay. Gamification elements like achievement badges, points, and virtual status levels add another layer of engagement. These features provide recognition with little or no material benefit, but they increase time spent on the platform. Workers often report putting in extra hours to maintain a badge or status, even when it doesn't lead to better pay or opportunities. Information asymmetry is perhaps the most significant manipulation. Platforms routinely display gross earnings while obscuring costs such as waiting time, fuel, maintenance, and taxes. Drivers are often unaware of the true value of their labor until tax season or after significant wear on their vehicles. Internal documents show that these design choices are intentional, aimed at sustaining the appearance of higher earnings and opportunity. The cumulative effect of these psychological tactics is a workforce that remains highly engaged, often to its own detriment. Workers expend significant time and energy optimizing for app-based rewards and milestones, rather than seeking out more stable or lucrative alternatives. The experience can feel like a constant chase, with the promise of a big payout always just out of reach. As platforms refine these systems, the pressure on workers only increases. Yet, beneath these layers of engagement, the landscape is shifting in ways that threaten the very rapid advance of automation is quietly erasing many of the most popular side hustles, often before workers realize what's happening. In 2025, AI content generators easily outperform humans in bulk writing jobs. Tools like Jasper and Copy.ai can create lengthy blog posts in seconds, and their output consistently scores higher on readability and SEO than most human writers. With Google's latest algorithm updates now penalizing low-quality, repetitive content, the few remaining content mill jobs pay so little, often a cent per word or less, that the economics no longer make sense for people trying to compete with AI. Rideshare driving is also under threat. Autonomous vehicles are no longer a future promise. They're already in operation in several major cities. Waymo's robot axis, for example, now run without safety drivers and are expanding fast. The cost advantage is clear. Robotaxis operate at a fraction of the price of human drivers, and companies like Uber are already piloting autonomous fleets in places like Phoenix and Austin. For drivers who recently financed new vehicles, the risk is real. Many will still be paying off car loans long after the work has dried up. Projections suggest that by 2027, nearly half of all rideshare jobs could disappear as automation takes over. Dropshipping, once a favorite of side hustle coaches, has seen its margins collapse. Changes to Amazon's and Shopify's algorithms now prioritize sellers with local inventory and fast shipping, squeezing out overseas suppliers and new entrants. A recent Shopify study found that nearly 9 out of 10 new dropshipping stores fail within months. The few that survive spend so much on advertising to stay visible that profits shrink to almost nothing. Meanwhile, Amazon's own fulfillment network absorbs most of the demand, offering shipping speeds and customer trust that small dropshippers can't match. Print-on-demand services have also reached a saturation point. The average creator now earns just over $1 per sale after fees and marketing costs. AI design tools have flooded the market with generic artwork, making it almost impossible for newcomers to stand out. The result is a handful of viral successes and a vast majority earning little or nothing each month. Platforms like Redbubble have seen a dramatic drop in active sellers as the reality sets in that most will never make meaningful income. Freelance coding, once considered safe, is facing similar pressures. AI coding assistants like GitHub Copilot now handle routine programming tasks faster and more accurately than most entry-level developers. The pay for basic web development work has dropped sharply, and even more complex projects are being automated. Only those with deep expertise in AI oversight or debugging are seeing steady demand, and these roles require far more specialized skills than the average side hustler has. Translation work has been almost entirely automated. Advanced language models now outperform humans on speed and accuracy for the vast majority of language pairs. Translation platforms have seen a steep decline in human jobs, with most remaining work requiring not just fluency, but also cultural and literary expertise, something that can't be picked up through a quick online course. Voiceover gigs are quickly following the same path. AI-generated voices are now indistinguishable from real people in most cases, and audiobook platforms are adopting synthetic narration at scale. The average pay for human narrators has dropped significantly, with only a few niches, celebrity voices, or highly specialized accents remaining profitable. Even online tutoring, once thought to be future-proof, is being disrupted. AI tutors now outperform most humans on comprehension tests, and major education platforms are shifting to automated systems for the majority of student queries. Human tutors are left competing for fewer, lower-paying jobs, often limited to credentialed professionals or those offering highly specialized help. The pattern is clear. Side hustles that rely on repetitive, rules-based tasks are rapidly being replaced by machines. People retain value in roles that require emotional intelligence, creativity, or complex judgment, qualities that most side hustles don't develop. Studies show that the average side hustle builds few, if any, transferable skills that protect against automation. Investing time and money in gigs that are on the verge of being automated carries real risk. Equipment purchased for these jobs quickly loses value, and many workers find themselves unable to recover their investment. Courses and tutorials still push outdated models because they're easier to sell than honest advice about reskilling. But this only leaves more people unprepared for what's coming. The reality is that automation isn't just changing the landscape, it's fundamentally altering the math behind side hustles. As the economics shift, it becomes even more important to understand what you're really earning for your time and effort. The overtime versus side hustle calculator. To make an informed decision about where to spend extra hours, it helps to put the numbers side by side. The overtime versus side hustle calculator is a straightforward tool for comparing what you actually keep from each option. Most people never run these calculations, but the results are revealing. Take a typical scenario. You have the chance to work 10 overtime hours at your main job, which pays $20 per hour. That's $200 gross. After a standard 20% tax withholding, you're left with $160 in take-home pay. There are no extra expenses, no equipment to maintain, no unpredictable costs, and no additional risk beyond what you already face at work. This is direct compensation for your time. Now look at 10 hours driving for Uber. The app might show $150 in gross earnings, but the deductions add up quickly. First, there's self-employment tax, which takes about $23 off the top. Then, figure in vehicle depreciation. AAA estimates 66 cents per mile, which comes to around $20 for the average 30 miles driven in that time. Gas might cost another $12, depending on prices in your area. After these core expenses, you're down to $95. And that's before accounting for Uber's platform fees, which can cut into your gross further. If you factor in a typical 25% platform cut on some fares, your real take-home can fall to $85 or less. That's nearly half the net pay of the overtime option, and you're left with a car that's lost value. The gap grows wider when you include benefits. Overtime at your main job often comes with workers' compensation coverage, paid leave accrual, and sometimes even retirement matching. Gig work offers none of these. If you get injured while driving, you're responsible for all medical bills and lost income. Over the course of a year, these differences compound. The overtime path also helps you build seniority at your primary job, making you more likely to get raises or promotions in the future. A recent LinkedIn study found employees who regularly picked up overtime advanced 28% faster than those who split their attention with side gigs. Safety is another consideration. The risks associated with gig work are often overlooked. Driving for rideshare carries a measurable accident risk. NHTSA data puts the odds at about 1 in 275 for every 10 hours behind the wheel. Even minor accidents can raise your insurance premiums by hundreds of dollars per year, eating further into your net earnings. Overtime in an office or retail environment is rarely as risky. Tax treatment also favors overtime. W-2 overtime pay is taxed once, while gig earnings are subject to self-employment taxes and in many cases offer limited deductions for real-world expenses. The IRS allows mileage deductions, but these rarely match the true cost of operating a vehicle, leading to taxable phantom income. Many gig workers are surprised by how little they actually keep after tax season. Time spent on gig work isn't always productive. The 10 hours you log on the app don't include time spent cleaning your car, reviewing earnings, or resolving customer disputes. University of Michigan research shows gig workers often spend 20% more time on unpaid tasks than they realize. In contrast, overtime hours at a regular job are compensated at a predictable rate for every minute worked. Earnings from overtime are also far more stable. Your paycheck arrives on schedule, and you know what to expect. Gig income fluctuates week to week, with slow periods forcing many to work extra hours just to hit their targets. This instability leads to income chasing. Workers put in more time for diminishing returns, chasing the illusion of control. Asset preservation is another overlooked factor. The depreciation on a personal vehicle used for gig work adds up quickly. Over a year, 10 hours per week of rideshare driving can cost over $1,000 in lost vehicle value alone. In contrast, office equipment or uniforms used during overtime rarely suffer meaningful depreciation. Health impacts round out the comparison. Gig workers report higher stress, more frequent sleep disruption, and greater exposure to occupational hazards. A recent Johns Hopkins study found gig workers experience over 3 times as many stress-related cortisol spikes per shift compared to office workers. The long-term healthcare costs associated with chronic stress and fatigue can easily outweigh any short-term financial gains. Finally, the overtime route builds career capital. Those extra hours can lead to new responsibilities, mentorship, or visibility with leadership, things that rarely happen through gig work. Even if your main job feels stagnant, the potential for advancement is still higher than in most app-based gigs, which offer no path to promotion. When you run the numbers honestly, the difference is clear. Overtime at your main job almost always beats gig work on net earnings, stability, safety, and long-term prospects. Yet, many still opt for side hustles, driven by the visible, instant feedback of app dashboards and a sense of progress. This tendency often leads people to stick with side gigs, even when the math no longer adds up, setting the stage for a different kind of trap. When hustles become traps. Many side hustles become traps not because of external barriers, but because of the psychological patterns that keep people tied to unprofitable ventures. The sunk cost fallacy is a powerful force. After months of effort, it's easy to believe that quitting now would mean all that time and money was wasted. Dropshipping is a common example. Someone who spent half a year building a store may continue pouring money into ads, convinced that success is just around the corner. The reality, backed by data, is that most new stores don't last a year, but every additional week invested only makes it harder to walk away. Content creators often fall into similar cycles. A YouTuber who's put out hundreds of videos and built up a small audience may keep producing content, holding out hope for monetization. Even as analytics show declining engagement, the urge to push harder grows. If they stop now, it would mean admitting the strategy wasn't working. The original goal becomes less important than justifying the time already spent. This pattern is echoed across platforms, from Instagram meme accounts to podcasters chasing sponsorships. The belief that the next post or episode could be the breakthrough overrides the mounting evidence to the contrary. Freelancers are not immune. Designers who have built their client base around low-fee projects often stick with underpaid work out of fear of losing the contacts they've accumulated. Rather than shifting to higher-paying opportunities, they remain locked into a cycle of unsustainable pricing, rationalizing it as a necessary step towards something better. In reality, the initial decision to compete on price becomes a barrier to moving up. Multi-level marketing schemes thrive on this mindset. Participants keep buying inventory and recruiting friends, unwilling to accept losses after investing significant money and time. The focus shifts from actual earnings to recouping what's already been spent, even as evidence mounts that success is rare. The same thinking appears with Amazon FBA sellers who keep paying for ads to move unsellable inventory, or with gig workers who chase platform bonuses, taking in profitable jobs to hit arbitrary targets. Each of these scenarios is driven by an aversion to loss, not by rational assessment of future potential. Opportunity cost is the silent undercurrent in these traps. Time spent on a failing side hustle is time not spent building skills with higher earning potential. A year lost to a business that never takes off could have been used to learn a marketable skill or build a client base in a more sustainable field. These invisible losses rarely get calculated, but they are often the most damaging part of the experience. Peer comparisons and platform design make it even harder to exit. Seeing others succeed, even if they are outliers, reinforces the idea that persistence will eventually pay off. Platforms highlight top earners and viral successes, creating the illusion that anyone can achieve the same with enough hustle. This selective visibility keeps people engaged long after the numbers stop making sense. Debt is another consequence. Some continue to fund side hustles with credit cards or loans, unwilling to admit defeat. The desire to avoid acknowledging a failed venture leads to even greater financial risk. Education scams and upsells prey on this vulnerability, offering advanced courses or tools as the missing piece, convincing people to spend more rather than cut their losses. As time and money invested grow, so does the difficulty of making objective decisions. Behavioral economists call this escalation of commitment. The more you've put in, the harder it is to change course, even when all signs point to a dead end. This isn't just stubbornness, it's a cognitive bias that affects nearly everyone, regardless of experience. Breaking out of these traps requires an honest assessment of results, not just effort. Tracking true hourly earnings, including all expenses and time, can reveal when a side hustle is dragging you down. Pivoting or quitting is not a failure. It's a rational response to new information. The willingness to move on is what separates sustainable ventures from money pits. Sometimes, the hardest part of side hustling is recognizing when it's time to stop. It's not about giving up, but about reallocating your resources to something with real potential. The cultural narrative around hustles often overlooks this, focusing instead on perseverance and grit. But the reality is that smart work, not just hard work, leads to better outcomes. There's also a deeper factor that shapes who gets stuck in these traps and who can walk away. The ability to choose which side hustles to pursue, or whether to pursue them at all, is not equally available to everyone. The privilege of choosing hustles. Discussions about side hustles often overlook a basic but important reality. Not everyone enters the gig economy with the same set of choices. For many, gig work is a last resort, not a calculated strategy. The 2025 Gig Economy report shows that while a large majority of platform workers technically have primary jobs, their main motivation is covering basic expenses like rent or utilities. That entrepreneurial sheen fades when you realize most are just trying to fill gaps left by stagnant wages or unpredictable schedules. The idea of side hustling as a fun, optional way to earn extra money rarely matches the lived experience for those who depend on it. Looking closer, the situation becomes even more complicated for those with family responsibilities. Single parents working multiple apps face lower average earnings, often due to rigid scheduling and the need for childcare. Juggling shifts between platforms means sleep comes in short, disrupted bursts, and the flexibility promised by gig companies rarely materializes. Instead, algorithms penalize anyone unable to accept last-minute jobs or work peak hours, reinforcing barriers for people with caregiving duties or health issues. Health insurance is another dividing line. Most side hustlers rely on coverage from a primary job, a spouse, or a parent. The minority who must buy their own insurance spend a significant share of their gig income on premiums. For them, every month is a calculation. How many extra deliveries or rides are needed just to break even on healthcare costs? It's a cycle that pushes people to work more, even as overwork increases the risk of illness or injury. Education and skills also shape outcomes. Workers with degrees are far more likely to use gig platforms for supplemental income, often leveraging specialized knowledge for higher hourly rates through tutoring or consulting. In contrast, those without degrees are more likely to rely on gig work as their main source of income. The difference is stark. Degree holders earn substantially more per hour, while those without advanced skills are left competing for the lowest-paying tasks. The gap widens further when you consider asset ownership. Someone with a paid-off vehicle can clear more profit from rideshare work than someone making car payments. For younger workers, who are more likely to finance their cars, much of their earnings disappear into loan and maintenance costs before they see any personal benefit. Financial safety nets, or the lack of them, play a significant role. Workers with family support or savings can manage slow periods or unexpected expenses. For others, a single bad week can mean choosing between paying bills or keeping their vehicle running. Many have had to pawn belongings or take on debt just to keep working. These stories rarely appear in gig economy marketing, which tends to showcase individuals who hustle by choice rather than necessity. Geography further influences outcomes. Urban gig workers benefit from higher demand and shorter travel distances, translating to more jobs per hour and better pay. Rural workers, on the other hand, cover longer distances for fewer gigs, facing higher fuel and maintenance costs. The same work yields less income, but often comes with greater expenses. Age and race introduce additional layers of inequity. Older workers pay more for insurance and face longer onboarding times, while algorithmic bias can disadvantage them compared to younger peers. Black gig workers, according to recent data, earn less than their white counterparts on the same platforms and often pay higher interest rates on loans for gig-related equipment. These disparities aren't just about individual effort. They reflect broader systemic issues that shape who benefits from gig work and who gets left behind. Immigrant workers encounter unique obstacles. Many arrive with advanced degrees but find themselves locked out of better jobs by visa restrictions or credential barriers, turning to gig work as a stopgap that often becomes permanent. For those with disabilities, the barriers are even higher. Most platforms remain inaccessible, and independent contractors lack the protections and accommodations that traditional employment might offer. Tax policy is another hurdle. Unlike W-2 employees, gig workers are responsible for estimating and paying their own taxes, often with incomplete or inaccurate information from platforms. This leads to frequent surprises at tax time, with many owing more than they expected. The complexity of quarterly payments and the lack of reliable withholding make it easy to fall behind or incur penalties. The biggest privilege of all is having alternatives. Workers with in-demand skills or access to stable employment can leave gig platforms when the downsides outweigh the benefits. For those without those options, the platforms become a trap. Earnings are capped by algorithms, and the promise of flexibility is replaced by the reality of constant hustle just to get by. This context matters when evaluating the advice to just work smarter or find a better gig. For millions, gig work isn't a stepping stone or a side project. It's the only option that keeps the bills paid. The narrative of hustle culture tends to obscure these realities, focusing on stories of voluntary hustling while ignoring the larger forces that limit real choice. Understanding these underlying dynamics is crucial before deciding how to spend your time and energy. For many, the best path forward isn't found in another app or a new side gig, but in exploring alternatives that offer better returns for the same effort. Better alternatives to the grind. When you look at the numbers, it becomes clear that there are more effective ways to use your time than pursuing another side hustle. Redirecting effort toward high-impact actions often leads to better financial results, greater stability, and more lasting benefits. One of the most overlooked steps is negotiating your salary. According to PayScale's 2025 data, nearly half of workers who ask for a raise receive one, with the average increase coming in at $7,500 per year. That's the equivalent of working over 100 extra hours at most gig jobs, yet it comes from a single conversation. The key is preparation. Benchmarking your salary against industry standards increases your chances of success. Spending a few hours researching compensation trends often yields a bigger return than an entire month of gig work. Changing employers can be even more powerful. LinkedIn's latest workforce analysis shows that switching jobs typically results in a 10 to 20% pay bump, compared to the modest raises most people get by staying put. Over a few years, this strategy can add thousands to your annual income. Investing time in networking and targeted job searches pays off, with those who actively build professional relationships securing new roles much faster than those who simply apply online. Each hour spent connecting with industry peers or attending events can open doors that side hustles rarely do. Relocation is another underutilized strategy. Moving from a high-cost city to a more affordable area can save thousands each year, even after accounting for potential differences in pay. Workers who research and plan their moves often find that the reduction in expenses is equivalent to getting a significant raise, but without the extra hours. For many, this kind of strategic move provides more financial breathing room than any side hustle could offer. Building new skills is a proven way to increase earning potential. Certifications in fields like cloud computing or HVAC can add thousands to your annual salary. The time investment, often a few dozen hours, pays off over years or even decades. Even learning a new software tool or developing a specialized skill within your current field can lead to promotions or higher-paying job offers. Unlike most gig work, these skills compound in value and open up new opportunities as your career progresses. Taking control of your finances can also yield substantial returns. Many workers overpay on taxes simply because they don't maximize deductions or credits. Spending a few hours with a tax professional or learning about common deductions can put hundreds or even thousands of dollars back in your pocket each year. Automating bill payments, refinancing high-interest debt, and setting up regular investments are small steps that add up to significant savings over time. Each hour invested in financial optimization often produces a better return than an entire week of gig work. Investing in health and well-being shouldn't be underestimated. Regular sleep and exercise are linked to higher productivity, fewer sick days, and lower healthcare costs. For salaried workers, the value of improved performance can be measured in thousands of dollars each year. The time spent on maintaining your health pays off not just financially, but in quality of life, something most side hustles can't offer. Networking and professional development consistently outperform gig work in terms of long-term impact. Attending industry events, joining professional groups, or even participating in online forums can lead to job offers, referrals, and new clients. The financial value of a single strong connection often outweighs months of side hustle earnings. These activities also build career capital, making you more resilient to changes in the job market. Time management is another area with hidden potential. Most people lose hours each week to low-value tasks or distractions. By reclaiming even a fraction of that time and redirecting it towards skill building, networking, or financial planning, you set yourself up for compounding gains. The payoff is not just money, but greater control over your future. Mental health investments deliver real financial returns as well. Addressing issues like anxiety or burnout can restore productivity and unlock higher earnings. The cost of therapy or counseling is often dwarfed by the increase in income and quality of life that comes from feeling and functioning better. What ties these alternatives together is that they build on your existing strengths and create opportunities for growth. Rather than trading time for small, unpredictable payouts, you focus on actions that multiply your resources and options over time. The path to financial stability and satisfaction is rarely found in another app or gig. It's in making smarter use of what you already have. As you weigh your options, it's worth considering why the culture around side hustles remains so persistent. The answer has less to do with actual results secret and more to do with influencers who dominate the side hustle space have built a business model that looks very different from what they claim. The majority of their income comes not from the hustles they promote, but from sponsorships, brand deals, and ad revenue tied to the content itself. According to a 2025 Influencer Marketing Hub study, the top creators in this niche earn nearly 9 out of every $10 from promoting products or selling access to their audiences, not from actually running the side businesses they teach. The so-called passive income gurus might make a modest amount from their own hustles, but their real earnings come from selling the dream to others. The gap between what's marketed and what's real is wide. Behind the scenes, many of these influencers outsource the very side hustles they claim are effortless. Contracts and leaked communications reveal that some pay teams of virtual assistants thousands each month to keep their automated businesses afloat, while publicly insisting it takes almost no work. Others continue to sell courses or guides for business models they've already abandoned, quietly shifting their focus to content creation because it's far more profitable. Investigations into these stories repeatedly find that the majority of influencer success stories are exaggerated or even fabricated, with only a handful of students ever seeing meaningful returns. There's also a layer of privilege that goes unmentioned. Many of the most visible figures in hustle culture have safety nets, family money, a spouse's high-paying job, or other forms of stable income that shield them from the risks their followers face. Some continue to collect income from real estate, trust funds, or unrelated businesses while telling others to quit their jobs and take big risks. These financial cushions allow them to weather losses or failed ventures that would devastate someone without that kind of backing. The result is a distorted picture of what's possible for the average person. Production values in their content are another giveaway. Videos featuring luxury cars, high-end apartments, and professional crews are expensive to produce, costs that far exceed what most side hustles could support. The polished image is part of the product, designed to make the lifestyle look attainable while hiding the real economics behind it. When pressed, many admit that their main business is making content about business, not running the side hustles themselves. Course content and educational products often leave out critical information. Analyses of popular programs show that most omit key steps or downplay the real costs involved. For example, some Amazon FBA courses gloss over the substantial inventory investments required, while print-on-demand guides ignore the ongoing ad spend necessary to stay visible. These omissions are not accidental. They help ensure that most students quietly fail and move on rather than demand refunds. In candid moments, some creators admit that if their methods worked as advertised, they'd quickly saturate the market and lose their own advantage. Sponsorships and affiliate deals are where the real money lies. With the rise of stricter disclosure rules, it has become clear just how much creators are paid to promote apps, platforms, and financial products, amounts that often dwarf anything they earn from the hustles themselves. The products pushed are selected for their high commissions, not because they offer the best results for followers. This creates a cycle where the influencer's main incentive is to keep the audience engaged and optimistic, regardless of actual outcomes. The lifestyle on display is rarely funded by side hustles alone. Accountants and analysts who have reviewed influencer businesses often find that the operations run at a loss, with the illusion of profitability maintained through selective reporting or creative accounting. The image of effortless wealth is carefully curated to sell more courses and attract more sponsorships. Much of the work is done by teams, not individuals. Surveys of top creators show that most employ full-time staff to handle customer service, video editing, marketing, and operations. The solopreneur narrative is a myth, maintained for branding purposes while the real workload is distributed behind the scenes. Even the interactive elements, Q&A sessions, email support, community moderation, are often managed by assistants, not the influencer themselves. Success rates among followers are low. While influencers highlight a few standout students, the vast majority never see a return on their investment in courses or tools. Data from several programs indicate that fewer than 1% of buyers achieve the results shown in marketing materials. Most quietly give up after losing money or running into hidden obstacles. Psychological tactics are common in this world. Influencers use urgency, scarcity, and social proof to drive sales countdown. Timers, claims of limited spots, and curated testimonials. These strategies are designed to trigger emotional responses and push people to buy quickly, rather than make informed decisions. When you examine the numbers, the logic falls apart. If the business models being promoted were truly as lucrative as claimed, there would be little incentive to spend time producing content or selling courses. The reality is that selling advice, not following it, is the most reliable way to profit in this space. The influencer's true expertise is in marketing and storytelling, not in the side hustles they endorse. Recognizing these patterns makes it easier to avoid the common traps. The next step is to look honestly at your own numbers and habits, and to decide whether the hustle is actually delivering what it promises. Breaking the cycle. Breaking the cycle involves a clear look at how time and money move through your life. The first step is getting past the surface numbers. Most people working side gigs focus on the headline payout, the $200 shown for a weekend of driving, or the $5,000 in monthly sales from a print-on-demand store. But these numbers don't reflect what actually lands in your pocket. Gas, maintenance, platform fees, advertising, time spent waiting or handling customer complaints. All these cut into the real hourly rate. A rideshare driver's app might display $25 an hour, but after counting unpaid miles and downtime, that figure often drops below $12. For print-on-demand, the difference between gross revenue and net profit can be even more dramatic. After subtracting out manufacturing costs, ad spend, and customer service, that impressive revenue shrinks to a fraction. Knowing your true take-home pay is the only way to see if your effort is building wealth or simply keeping you afloat. With a realistic picture of earnings, the next step is to examine how you spend your hours. Every block of time given to a side hustle is time not spent elsewhere. Those same hours could be invested in learning a skill with a measurable payoff, like SQL or project management, or used to expand your professional network. Industry data shows that workers who spend time networking see higher referral bonuses and better job offers. Even choosing rest over more work has tangible benefits. Well-rested employees perform better and are less likely to burn out. The goal isn't to fill every spare minute with paid work, but to allocate time in ways that lead to greater returns down the line. Gig platforms are designed to keep you engaged. Surge pricing, bonus offers, and streak rewards are engineered to trigger a sense of urgency, nudging you to prioritize the app over everything else. These psychological cues can make it feel like every shift is an opportunity you can't afford to miss. But most of these incentives add little to your bottom line after expenses. Turning off notifications, setting boundaries around when you'll work, and scheduling regular reviews of your actual earnings can help break this pattern. When the urgency fades, it becomes easier to see whether the hustle is worth it. Building leverage is the difference between treading water and making progress. Workers who focus on developing specialized skills, negotiating for better terms, or finding ways to earn from assets they already own end up with more control over their financial future. Renting out equipment, consulting in your field, or selling in used items are examples where time and resources are used more efficiently. These activities often require less ongoing effort and carry lower risk than starting a new gig from scratch. Health costs are another hidden drain. The stress and fatigue from constant hustling add up. Higher cortisol levels, more mistakes, and increased medical expenses. Over time, these effects can erase whatever small gains come from gig work. The cycle of exhaustion and recovery leaves little energy for the kind of skill building or planning that leads to lasting improvement. Prioritizing rest and health isn't just about feeling better. It directly impacts long-term earnings and stability. Escaping the cycle means being willing to change tactics. Regularly audit your side hustles by tracking net hourly earnings, not just gross payouts. If the numbers don't beat what you could make elsewhere, or even what a local entry-level job pays, it's time to reconsider. Use technology to block distractions from gig apps during times you want to focus on higher value activities. Automate savings from your main job so that extra gig income doesn't create a false sense of security. These shifts help move your mindset from constant hustle to strategic growth. Alternative income streams can supplement or replace gig work, but they work best when they fit your existing skills and resources. Renting out what you already own, consulting in your area of expertise, or even selling items you no longer need often yield better returns than starting from zero with a new side hustle. The difference is that these approaches build on what you have, rather than requiring endless hours of new labor. The real distinction isn't between people who work hard and those who don't. It's between those who use their time to create lasting value and those who end up trading hours for diminishing returns. Platforms benefit when workers stay fragmented and isolated, but joining professional networks or sharing strategies with others can help shift the balance. Workers who pool knowledge and negotiate together see higher rates and better outcomes. For many, the cycle of gig work becomes a habit, reinforced by short-term gains but undermined by long-term costs. Changing course isn't easy, but it starts with honest math and a willingness to reallocate effort. When you measure success by value created, not just hours logged, your options expand. The way out of the hustle trap is to make each hour count for more, not just for today, but for the years ahead. This shift in perspective is what makes the difference between moving forward and staying stuck. The next step is recognizing the broader forces at play and how the structure of side hustles keeps so many people running in place. When you look at the evidence, side hustles rarely deliver the financial freedom they promise. For most, the cycle of gig work means long hours and little progress, with many workers barely covering expenses after factoring in costs and time. The reality is that working more hours on low-yield gigs often leads to exhaustion, not wealth. The research is clear. Building valuable skills and focusing on a primary area of expertise offers far greater returns than chasing multiple side incomes. Specialists see much higher wage growth and better long-term prospects. Sometimes the smartest move is to step back, prioritize rest, and invest your energy where it truly counts.